The polls and the numbers stand for more on this. We're now being joined by Johanna LeBlanc from Washington, D.C. She is a political analyst, national security law analyst, and foreign relations expert. Welcome to WION, Ms. LeBlanc.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to join you.
Right. Now, Ms. LeBlanc, talking about the latest trends coming in on the swing states. The swing states which have closed right now is Michigan, Pennsylvania, the Blue Wall State, and the Sunbelt state of Georgia. According to latest trends at this point of time, Trump is leading in Georgia, but that battleground state is it's rather a seesaw because Trump is only leading by 1%. Meanwhile, Harris has taken a lead in Michigan and Pennsylvania. She's also leading in Wisconsin by a very narrow margin. That's 1%. Your early thoughts on the latest trend right now?
I think ultimately we'll just have to wait until every single vote is accounted for in order to make a determination. But earlier you talked about various races of members of Congress, the House and the Senate, that are just as critical as the presidency. Because you see, the reality is that irrespective of who wins, if you don't have a Congress that supports your objectives as a president, you could see yourself not being as successful. Yes, presidents do have the authority to govern through executive orders, right? But once you leave office, the next president that comes in, by a stroke of a pen, that policy is reversed. Whereas if you have a Congress that you are working with, you can get some of these policies codified and put them into law. But you do need a Congress that will support you with that. So the House right now looks as though it's going towards the Republican Party, and I'm sorry, the Senate is going to be going towards the Republican Party, and the House is probably going to go towards the Democrats. But it's still quite too early to tell as it relates to the House.
Right, Ms. LeBlanc, it's too early to make a call right now, and with numbers coming in at this point of time is 114 to 78. It's too close to a race to call, but stay with us. My colleague Jyotsna will get the latest as the numbers are trickling in.
All right. Now, of course, we're talking about swing states now, of course. So let's take a look at what leads are picking up. So if you look at Georgia, 81% of votes have been counted. This is according to the AP estimates. Trump is leading with 52.2%. Let's go upwards. Now we go to Pennsylvania now. 47% of votes have been counted. Donald Trump is leading there again with 50.1%. We move closer to Michigan, of course. Kamala Harris is leading there with 50.6% there. 17% of vote has been counted. Wisconsin, let's move there now. 40% of votes have been counted in Wisconsin, and 50.3%. That is the margin with which Trump is leading. Now let's go to Arizona. We've got some results trickling in from there. 49.6%. Donald Trump is leading with that percentage point out. 34% of votes have been counted there. So yeah, majorly, if you look at the swing states, we look at North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Arizona. Out of the 7 battleground states, we have Trump that is leading, as you can see on your map. Nevada is not open yet, so we don't go there yet. But Pennsylvania, it looks red. It looks red. So Pennsylvania, we can say that Trump is leading there and is going to get that. Now, Wisconsin and Michigan are the next two blue wall states that have gone to Biden took a lead in 2020 there, and we get to see what happens next here.
Right, Jyotsna. Trump is leading in Pennsylvania by 1%, and the numbers that you're seeing on your screens right now, which are the early trends, the leads and the wins of the state, 324 for the red camp and 131 for the blue camp right now. Ms. LeBlanc, if you're still with us. Right, seems like there's some technical glitch with Ms. LeBlanc at this point of time. We have with us our VOA correspondent, Chris Cascio, joining us. Chris, what's happening in the state of Michigan right now? Earlier, when you joined us on the broadcast, the polls were not closed. There was still 30 minutes to go. But what's the latest from the battleground state of Michigan, which is key for the race to the White House?
Sure, it looks like a fair amount of the votes are counted in Michigan with Harris with a 50% lead. It looks like it's narrowed since you even last updated it in the last few minutes. So that means that that those are probably the votes that are coming in from rural areas. But we have to see how the candidates are doing in the major urban centers like Grand Rapids, Detroit, and then the suburbs surrounding those areas to see what the margins are there.
Right, Chris, Harris is up by 2% in the battleground state of Michigan, extremely pertinent to the race to the White House. Talk to us about how there is a growing discontent between the Arab Americans, which form a large voter base in the state of Michigan. Keeping in mind how Michigan is one of the blue state walls to win the White House, do you see the numbers seesawing in the next few minutes? Because as of now, only 18% of votes are counted in Michigan, and that is showing Harris with a 2% lead.
Sure. We're going to have to see how the vote comes in from Dearborn, which is the first Arab majority state in the U.S. as of 2023. More than half of the population, which is 110,000 in Dearborn, are Arab, and 46% are Muslim, and they are very concerned about the war in Gaza and how the current administration has basically given its support to Israel in that conflict, even as it grows. But they don't think that Donald Trump is a better option because the mayor remembers that Donald Trump tried to enact the Muslim ban when he was president. But there is another area just near Detroit called Hamtramck where the mayor endorsed Donald Trump, and Donald Trump actually has a field office there. So we'll have to see how that out. When Joe Biden was the candidate in the primary, 10,000 voters were uncommitted. They voted uncommitted rather than to push Biden through to the nomination. So we'll have to see if there's any kind of a protest vote among that very important constituency of 300,000 Arab Americans here in Michigan.
Right. I'm curious now, Pennsylvania, let's give you an update as well. Pennsylvania is going red. Trump is leading there. Now, you're in Michigan, of course. Now, when you look at Michigan results, Trump had won in 2016 against Clinton. Biden won back the state back in 2020. Kamala Harris, it seems like, this is swinging. It seems like, well, are we going to have a Clinton again, like a Clinton situation like again?
Yeah, we'll have to see, because the Harris campaign really had touted its ground game, especially in the state of Pennsylvania. They had knocked on so many hundreds of thousands of doors, whereas, the Trump campaign had outsourced its ground game to Elon Musk's companies. So, we did see that a lot of the college students in the major urban centers of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia were voting in great numbers, and there were a lot of people in lines there. But, we don't know how that vote is breaking. So we're just going to have to see, it's like any of the battleground states. We expect the rural counties to be predominantly supported. But, if he can cut into the margins in the suburbs and in the major urban areas, in the major urban centers like Scranton, Lancaster, Philadelphia, and Pittsburgh, then yeah, you might have.
Right, there seems to be some technical glitch with our VOA correspondent Chris there, who was talking to us about how Trump is leading in the state of Pennsylvania. We have with us our guest, Ms. LeBlanc, again with us. Ms. LeBlanc, according to the numbers and trends that have come in, we are seeing a seesaw in the battleground states, with Trump now leading by 2% in Pennsylvania, Harris by just about 1% in Michigan. Do you reckon, or is there an indication that when we talk about the popular vote, Harris may have the lead? But like what we saw during the Clinton versus Trump battle back in 2016. But when it comes to the Electoral College, the ballgame is different altogether.
Absolutely. You rightfully said it. You could win the popular vote and still not win the presidency. The popular vote is important, but it's not sufficient for one to secure the presidency. And so we're just going to have to look at the battleground states which are the states that once, like we said earlier, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, and Georgia, and so on. And once a candidate wins those states, they get to walk away with all of the electors for those states. Like, for example, the state of California, which has about 50 electors, which we expect Harris to win because that's her home state. She will walk away with about 50 electors. So at the end of the day, I think both candidates right now, their eyes are on that 270. And as we see right now, Trump is a little bit closer to that 270, but there's still time for that to potentially change. But not much room. But I think at any given moment now, we should really determine who's going to possibly win this election. And if you look at the betting world, many of the betting folks are predicting that Trump is going to win the presidency. But I think ultimately we need to wait to see after every vote has been counted to really be able to make a firm determination as to what's next.
Right, Mr. Blank, stay with us. I just want to tell our viewers the latest trends that are coming in at this point of time. It's a neck-and-neck battle in the blue state of Wisconsin, which Trump is leading by 1%, but now that has trickled down to 0.5%. Meanwhile, talking about the numbers that are coming in, the winning states, Kamala Harris, the blue camp, has 109 seats, electoral votes in her kitty. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has 198. And talking about the numbers that you're seeing on your screens right now, 308 for Trump against 147 for Harris. These are the states that have been won by both the parties and the early trends. So, Jyotsna, looks like it is too close a race to call right now, because the battleground states, the 7 swing states that determine the outcome of the U.S. presidential race, that is seesawing at this point of time.
Absolutely. Now, with that, I want to come back to our guest now. If you still have her now. And it's really interesting because these blue wall states are something that the Democrats have always tried to keep in their piggy bank so that they win the election. What I want to ask you, Ms. LeBlanc, is Pennsylvania is one state where we know the shooting assassination attempt took place, but after that, a lot of things have taken place. For example, the floating island of garbage incident, of course, took place in that campaign. How do you reckon, do you think those end days of rally influence these voters to go? And, well, did that change their mind? Because apparently, well, it's going red as of now. But how do you think did that influence these voters, these November 5th voters to go and vote?
I think there are a number of things that we have to take into consideration. One, VP Harris was thrown into this race at the very last minute. She literally had 100 days to run a presidential campaign, completely unprecedented. And I think that in spite of her and her team have run an incredibly good race. I mean, they've managed to raise over $1 billion, which a bulk of that money have gone towards communications to ensure that she gains more visibility and to ensure that more and more of the American public really understand her policy position. So that's one. Secondly, I think VP Harris, there's a lot of people who just were not familiar with her policy position, still getting to know her. Yes, she is the current vice president of the United States, but as we know, the vice president serves at the pleasure of the president, and you're there to support the objective of the commander-in-chief. So there's not a whole lot of visibility that comes with that role. She also served as a former senator. There are 535 members of Congress, 100 on the Senate side, 535 on the House side. The average American knows nothing about who they are, unless you are the Alexandria Cortez of the world, the Ilhan Omar, and our new rising star now, Jasmine Crockett. So most people were not familiar with VP Harris when she was a senator. That's that. But also, too, you have to understand, she is a woman. And that means something. She's a woman of Indian descent, and she's a woman of African descent, right? And America is not a post-racial country.
Right, there seems to be some There seems to be some audio problem with our
and
guest,
I
Ms.
feel like
LeBlanc.
that's really rightly like the topics she picked up, the fact that she's from an Indian descent and African descent, but how does that trickle into the votes? Because popular vote is one thing, but electoral votes are another.
Right, Rosna, I just want to add to the fact that she has somehow not been able to bring in the base, the voter base amongst the Latino voters
Yeah, it looks like
and
exactly.
the black men voters, like what Biden had garnered in 2020. And latest trend suggests that at least 58% of the Latino voters decided for Biden, but that has not been the support base for Harris this time
Exactly,
around.
and that's the reason why there's so much comparison with Clinton and Harris back in 2016.
So this is where we sit.
All right, for all those tuning in to WION World is one, the latest numbers and the trends right now. The number of seats, one, Harris has 109 electoral votes in her bank. Meanwhile, Trump has 198. Talking about the leads, early leads and the wins, 308 for the red camp and 147 for Harris. Joseph, it does look like it's too close a race to call right now. It will all trickle down to the 7 battleground states, which is perhaps seeing a seesaw at this point.
Absolutely.